5 years ago, Gu Kazhou disappeared without a word. Since then, not a single call or message came through. Yu Shui could only curse his ancestors for the next 18 generations in her heart. Now, 5 years later, Gu Kazhou suddenly calls, expecting her to drop everything and pick him up from the airport. Yu Shui's response? 2 simple words: keep dreaming. But as resolute as her refusal was, she found herself betraying her own stance just as quickly. After hanging up and making the same mistake for the nth time due to her distracted thoughts, Yu Shui requested time off from work and rushed to the airport. When she finally stood in the airport lobby, watching Gu Kazhou approach her step by step, a raging storm brewed inside her, but outwardly, she maintained a calm, emotionless facade. Showing no reaction and giving away nothing, this was her last bit of pride. Gu Kazhou was more handsome and striking than she remembered. His face had matured, shedding the reckless aura of his youth, replaced by a composed and restrained demeanor. No longer the brash boy, he had grown into a man who exuded steadiness and reliability. Especially in that long black down jacket, his figure looked even more tall and upright, like a tree standing firm, distant yet impressive. But Yu Shui knew that this was all just a gilded exterior. Beneath the surface lay his true self, rotten to the core. Sure enough, Gu Kazhou stopped just 2 steps in front of her. He squinted at her for a while before his facade broke, and the cocky, playful side she remembered came rushing back. With a smirk, he opened his arms toward her. "Come on, little bun. Let me feel the warmth of the homeland." Yu Shui didn't move. She deliberately misinterpreted his words. "You mean a warm punch?" "That would be unkind." Gu Kazhou pretended to pout. "You know, they say being beaten is a sign of affection. But if you're so eager to kiss me, I'm not sure I can handle it." Yu Shui sneered and turned to leave. No way she could outmatch him in shamelessness. Gu Kazhou quickly caught up, overtaking her in 2 strides. He turned around and tightly embraced her. She struggled, but he whispered softly in her ear, almost pleading, "Don't move. Just let me hold you for a moment." His embrace was too warm and his tone too gentle. Yu Shui's heart softened. She let him hold her, neither resisting nor pushing him away. "This is nice," Gu Kazhou sighed contentedly. "What's so nice?" Yu Shui's voice was filled with frustration. "No matter how nice, it wasn't enough to make you stay. No matter how nice, you could still ignore me for 5 years without a word." As she spoke, her eyes began to sting with unshed tears. Gu Kazhou didn't respond. Instead, he pulled her closer, his face brushing gently against her ear in what seemed like an affectionate gesture. The man she had longed for all these years was standing right beside her now. Yu Shui almost forgot her vow to make him pay for his abandonment and found herself hugging him back. Just then, she heard him murmur, "You've grown and gotten softer." His lips lightly brushed against the edge of her ear as he spoke, sending shivers down her spine. With that one teasing remark, Yu Shui almost blushed in embarrassment. But when she looked up, she noticed his gaze lingering suggestively on her chest. Instantly snapping back to her senses, she gritted her teeth. "Gu Kazhou, some things never change." Yu Shui shoved Gu Kazhou away. Yu Shui clenched her fists, silently reminding herself not to be fooled by his pitiful look. Yu Shui stole a glance at him, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. It was clear he hadn't been sleeping well. Gu Kazhou remained quiet during the entire ride, and Yu Shui thought he was pretending to sleep. It wasn't until later that she realized he was truly asleep. When they arrived, she called him twice before he jolted awake, looking at her in confusion. He smiled bitterly and said, "Little bun, I dreamed of you again. I guess I really miss you." Yu Shui's eyes reddened instantly. Did he miss her too? Had he been dreaming of her all this time? But Gu Kazhou, being the man he was never one to evoke pity for long. After a second of genuine emotion, he quickly shifted back to his usual mischief. He leaned in and pressed his head against her chest, cheekily whining, "Dreams are better." I can hold you like this, and you'd grant all my wishes. Yu Shui took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to smack him, and shoved him away hard. Grant all your wishes? Keep dreaming. Wait, really? Gu Kezhou looked shocked, then pinched Yu Shui's arm. Seeing her wince in pain, he fully snapped out of his daze. It's real. I'm back home. If you want proof, pinch yourself. Why me? Yu Shui scolded, rubbing her arm. Because I'm so used to teasing you. Gu Kezhou shamelessly grinned. Yu Shui scoffed. 5 years apart, and you still haven't dropped that habit? Gu Kezhou froze, his expression complicated as he gazed at her. After a long pause, he gently called, Shui. Yu Shui turned her head away, avoiding his gaze. She didn't want to keep using her words to hurt him, but the anger in her heart just couldn't be contained. Shui, Xiaozhou. Du Rulin, waiting at the entrance of their neighborhood, waved to them. Yu Shui quickly responded and walked briskly toward Du Rulin, ignoring Gu Kezhou. Gu Kezhou also composed himself, putting on a bright smile. Ms. Du, your handsome son is back. Du Rulin was Gu Kezhou's mother and also Yu Shui's high school teacher. Both mother and son had once saved Yu Shui's life. Yu Shui's father, Yu Changyuan, was a violent and incompetent man. Besides drinking, his greatest skill was beating his wife. After his wife fled, Yu Shui became his new punching bag, frequently subjected to his fists and kicks. One time, the beating was particularly brutal, and Yu Shui lay on the floor, unable to move. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Perhaps she had run out of them, or perhaps she knew they wouldn't change anything. Lying there with her eyes closed for a long time, she seriously wondered if she might be lucky enough not to open them again. It was the closest she had come to death. Her mind grew hazy, her senses dulled, and everything became a blur. She thought it was finally the end, but then she suddenly heard Du Rulin's frantic voice calling, Shui, Yu Shui. She heard it, but didn't respond. 1, she didn't have the strength to speak, and 2, she thought she was hallucinating. The first time she had seen Du Rulin at school, she had been drawn to her gentle aura, even imagining how wonderful it would be if she were her mother. Now, she assumed this was just her dying wish being fulfilled. Sure enough, after a short while, Du Rulin's voice stopped, and Yu Shui smiled faintly, feeling at peace. But soon after, there was a loud banging on the door. Yu Shui slowly shifted on the floor, turning her face toward the entrance. This time, she knew it wasn't a hallucination. The banging was real, and alongside it, she heard Yu Changyuan's distant shouting as he approached. Who the hell is that brat causing trouble on my turf? Banging on my door. You damn brat. Ah. My arm. You. Stop. Stop. I'll open the door. Through the door, Yu Shui could only piece together what happened based on Yu Changyuan's interrupted words. It seemed someone had subdued him and forced him to open the door. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Du Rulin who rushed in first, but a young man. Yu Shui barely caught a glimpse of his white sneakers before he dashed over to her, crouching down. How are you? Can you move? He asked urgently. His brows were furrowed in worry and anger, exuding a fierce energy. But for some reason, Yu Shui felt strangely safe. This boy was Gu Kezhou. When he scooped her up and carried her out, when he kicked down Yu Changyuan as he tried to stop them, Yu Shui, in her daze, thought she saw an angel. It turned out that Du Rulin had come to visit because Yu Shui hadn't been attending school, and Gu Kezhou had just tagged along. But regardless, they saved her. Later, they helped her file charges against Yu Changyuan for domestic violence, sending him to prison and freeing her from the hell of beatings forever. Yu Shui would later learn that Gu Kezhou's anger had stemmed from the fact that Du Rulin had also been a victim of domestic violence. At the time, he had been too young to help, forced to watch his mother endure the abuse. So Yu Shui's situation had immediately stirred up his empathy and protective instincts. Gu Kezhou had once told her that he would always look out for her, and that even if Yu Changyuan got out of prison, she had nothing to fear. For a time, Yu Shui considered him her hero. Even when she slowly realized he was actually a mischievous flirt, she still liked him and wanted to stand by his side. But later, she discovered he was also the kind of jerk who could suddenly go abroad for studies without a word. That happened after Yu Shui finished her college entrance exams. Yu Changyuan was released from prison not long before he was killed in a car accident. Gu Kezhou and Du Ruolin helped with the funeral arrangements, but Yu Shui was completely out of it, mechanically following along with whatever was needed. During that time, Gu Kezhou stayed by her side, cheering her up and making sure she ate, catering to her every need. Once, she had a nightmare where a blood-soaked Yu Changyuan appeared as a vengeful ghost from hell, demanding her life. Terrified, she called Gu Kezhou, who rushed over in the middle of the night, softly comforting her as they lay down together. To distract her, he began teasing her, getting touchy and playful, kissing here, touching there, until things almost went too far. But in the end, his antics had worked, calming her down. Half embarrassed, half relieved, she fell asleep and slept soundly through the night. Just a few days later, though, Gu Kezhou quietly left for his studies abroad without even giving Du Ruolin much notice. After he left, Du Ruolin fell ill, and Yu Shui moved in to take care of her. Your room hasn't been touched by the teacher or me. Everything is still where it was. You probably know better than we do, Yu Shui said as her gaze swept over the room, the bed, wardrobe, bookshelf, desk, before finally resting on Gu Kezhou. After he left, she often sat alone in his room, lost in thought. She would flip through the books he had read and sleep in the bed he once slept in, letting the overwhelming feelings of longing engulf her. Sometimes she would even pretend he was still there. She remembered that self-deception so vividly, to the point that now, she couldn't tell whether the man before her was real or just a figment of her imagination. Gu Kezhou seemed to sense her emotions and gently hugged her. Shui, I'm back. They stood quietly in each other's embrace for a moment. Yu Shui sniffed and suppressed the turmoil inside her before saying calmly, I cleaned your room every day. Even though you didn't say you were coming back, it's good that I don't have to scramble now. Go ahead and rest. I'll call you when it's time to eat. She turned to leave after speaking, but Gu Kezhou suddenly pulled her onto the bed. Yu Shui let out a small gasp and tried to prop herself up on her arms. What are you doing? The teacher's still outside. Gu Kezhou only became more mischievous, flipping over to press her down as he shamelessly threatened. Then don't make any noise. Be a good girl and nap with me. He never stayed serious for more than 2 minutes. Yu Shui felt a wave of frustration and pushed him away. I'm not sleepy. Gu Kezhou didn't budge an inch. He stared at her intently, his tone turning serious. To be honest, I'm not sleepy either, especially like this, me on top, you on the bottom. I feel even more awake. How about we pick up where we left off 5 years ago? You wouldn't dare. Yu Shui's voice was low but firm. She looked fierce, but in reality, it was just for show. She couldn't tell if Gu Kezhou was joking or not, and was worried that if he got serious, she'd be the one embarrassed. If you're going to sleep, just close your eyes. What's the point of staring? What? You like what you see. Yu Shui begrudgingly gave in, but her words remained sharp. Gu Kezhou, having gained the upper hand, grinned. I knew you wanted to sleep with me. At dinner, Yu Shui wished she could bury her head in her bowl. Earlier, when Du Ruolin knocked on the door, she woke up with a start and realized that she had fallen asleep without even noticing. Just staying in the same room for so long was already hard to explain, but Gu Kezhou, acting as if he wanted everyone to know, was yawning lazily and even exaggeratedly shook his arm, complaining that it had gone numb from her weight. If it weren't for Du Ruolin's presence, Yu Shui would have sewn his mouth shut right then and there. Thinking about it, she cautiously glanced at Du Ruolin, but seeing that her expression remained unchanged, Yu Shui finally let out a sigh of relief. After dinner, the three of them sat in the living room for a chat. Yu Shui hesitated several times before finally gathering the courage to speak. Teacher, I'm planning to move out next week. Don't move out, Du Rulin interrupted her, casting a glance at Gu Kazhou. Let him move out. After all, he's been gone for 5 years, and I'm used to it. But you, Shui, you're my little cotton-padded jacket. No matter who leaves, you can't. Yu Shui wanted to continue, but Gu Kazhou interrupted her again. I'm not moving. Ms. Du, your son has had enough of running around and just wants to be cooped up now. I'm not going anywhere. And Xiamantis shouldn't move either. It's not like there's only one room upstairs. Even if there was only one. He paused, his eyes looking at Yu Shui with a suggestive smile. Yu Shui shot him a warning look, urging him not to say anything inappropriate. Gu Kazhou blinked innocently at her before continuing. Even if there was only one room, I'm in no position to be picky given my current status. Sleeping on the floor would be fine. If you want to sleep on the floor, that's your business, Du Rulin said. Talk to Shui. If she insists on moving out, then I'll go with her. You can stay here alone, whether on the floor or in the bed. Nobody will care. Ms. Du, Gu Kazhou grabbed Du Rulin's hand and playfully whined. Is this really how you talk to your son after not seeing him for 5 years? That really hurts. Du Rulin pulled her hand back. Let it hurt. Boys shouldn't be spoiled. Seeing he was getting nowhere, Gu Kazhou turned to Yu Shui with a pitiful expression. Xiamantu no. Xiabuzi, can you really bear to see me go? Yu Shui rolled her eyes at him. Yes, I can. Gu Kazhou acted like he couldn't believe she was so heartless, dramatically clutching his chest as he collapsed onto the couch. After a moment, he sat up again and looked at the two women, stating firmly, Fine, then both of you move out. Just be sure to take me with you when you go. Thank you. In the end, of course, Yu Shui stayed. Du Rulin might have been joking about Gu Kazhou moving out, but she genuinely wanted Yu Shui to stay, and how could Yu Shui not understand her feelings? But living under the same roof as Gu Kazhou, Yu Shui felt like a sheep walking into a lion's den. Du Rulin hadn't retired yet, and she was now the head teacher of a senior class, so she was very busy, usually only taking a break every 2 weeks. That left most weekends with just Gu Kazhou and Yu Shui at home together, giving him plenty of time and space to stir up trouble. He showed no restraint, nor did he change his bad habits from the past. Whenever he got the chance, he would take advantage of Yu Shui. One day, he collected the underwear she had hung out to dry on the balcony. When confronted, he said with a straight face, Oh, I made a mistake. The cups were too small, kind of flat. I thought they were rags. The next day, he wandered around shirtless in front of her, proudly saying, With a face and body like mine, it's not fair for you to look for free. How about we do an exchange? You look at me, and I'll look at you. A fair trade. The day after that, he pretended to be drunk and acted wildly, hugging and kissing her no matter how much she fought him off, muttering, If I die under a peony flower, I'll still be a happy ghost. But Yu Shui was no longer the naive girl from 5 years ago. She knew how to handle him. When he collected her underwear, she would bring out all of it and let him choose his favorite, saying, I don't judge people with special preferences, but go crazy in your own house. Otherwise, it wouldn't look good if I had to bail you out of the police station. When he strutted around shirtless, she would calmly look at him and even pull out her phone to search for pictures of top male models to compare. You've got the abs, but the muscle definition isn't quite perfect yet. Show off when you're at their level, and I'll fulfill all your requests. When he faked being drunk, she would let him act out his scene, and just when he thought she was softening, ready to take advantage, she'd douse him with a glass of water. Sober up and wash your face. 2 birds with 1 stone. No need to thank me. The two of them fought with words and wits, sparring like lovers and rivals at the same time. Neither of them spoke about what happened 5 years ago, but their motives were different. Yu Shui wanted Gu Kazhou to explain on his own, while Gu Kazhou hoped to gloss over the past with his playful banter. The two of them seemed to get along on the surface. but the underlying problems never disappeared. It was only a matter of time before things exploded. The first to lose control was Gu Kazhou. The trigger was that Yu Shuxue had gone out for 2 weekends in a row, and every time she was picked up and dropped off by a sharp-looking man in a suit. Who is he? What does he do? What's your relationship? Why do you keep meeting with him? Why do you come back so late? What have you two been doing? Gu Kazhou fired off a series of questions, not hiding his jealousy or insecurity in the least. Yu Shuxue glanced at him, walked over to the sofa, sat down, and casually replied, "A friend." There are many kinds of friends. Gu Kazhou followed her. Acquaintances are friends, casual nods are between friends, true friends keep their distance. Gu Kazhou, Yu Shuxue interrupted, staring straight into his eyes. Being indirect isn't your style. You just want to ask if we're involved romantically, don't you? Her gaze was calm, and her tone was light, but it made Gu Kazhou's heart tighten. It was this calmness that unnerved him. He would rather she impatiently told him directly or coldly avoided the topic altogether than speak to him like this. This version of her felt so unfamiliar, making him feel as if something stood between them, perhaps the 5 years they had been apart, or perhaps their hearts. Yes, Gu Kazhou nodded. He couldn't let this distance remain between them, so he pretended to be firm. I do want to know if you two are romantically involved. What does it matter to you? Yu Shuxue remained indifferent. How can it not matter? Gu Kazhou raised his voice. My feelings for you are clear as day. You belong to me, you always have and you always will. No one is going to take you from me. I belong to you. Yu Shuxue let out a mocking laugh, her eyes glistening with tears. Gu Kazhou, do you even know what I like or dislike right now? Do you know what places I've been? What sights I've seen? Do you know how many of my colleagues and friends have come and gone? Do you know about the nights I was going crazy, missing you so much I couldn't sleep? Do you know? Shuxue, Gu Kazhou's face turned pale. He reached out to take her hand, but she pulled away. No. Gu Kazhou, you don't know? Yu Shuxue said, tears streaming down her cheeks. 5 years. 5 years have changed everything. My tastes have changed. My style has changed. My friends have come and gone. I've gone from being a student to being part of the real world. You weren't part of any of those changes. So how can you claim I belong to you? There's a 5-year gap between us, and you can't just brush it away with some flirtatious words, hugs, and kisses. I admit I still care for you and find it hard to let go, she continued. But the fact that you left without a word, without a single explanation for 5 whole years, has always been a thorn in my heart, one that's been aching all this time. You know my personality. I can't tolerate betrayal. Unless you can pull out that thorn, there's no future for us. Gu Kazhou felt an immense pain in his heart as he reached out to wipe away her tears. Shuxue, I'll always be here from now on. I'll never leave again. Let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you, okay? Yu Shuxue gave a bitter smile. You still won't explain, will you? She finished speaking and, after a moment of locking eyes with him, stood up and walked away before she could soften. Yu Shuxue returned to her room, buried herself under the covers and cried, cursing Gu Kazhou under her breath. But after walking around all day, she was exhausted. Before she knew it, she had cried herself to sleep. In a daze, she suddenly felt someone climb onto her bed. Startled, she quickly slapped the intruder and kicked them off the bed. Ouch! With a muffled groan, Yu Shuxue fumbled for the switch and turned on the light. Gu Kazhou. Sure enough, the person who had fallen to the ground was Gu Kazhou. He was holding his face with one hand and his backside with the other, looking rather ridiculous. Yu Shuxue, you're done for. You've ruined my face and crippled me. Gu Kazhou exaggerated. Don't you dare play the victim. Yu Shuxue sat up, wrapped in her blanket. Who told you to sneak into my bed in the middle of the night? I was being merciful not to beat you to death. I didn't sneak. I called your name several times. You just didn't hear me. What did you call me for? We're still in the middle of a fight, aren't we? I know that. Gu Kazhou sighed, but I was afraid you'd cry so much your eyes would swell up and you wouldn't be able to go to work tomorrow. I came to help you with a cold compress. Only then did Yu Shui notice the towel draped over his arm. Her heart softened, but she still retorted, I don't need your help. Coming into bed with a cold compress. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. If I don't take care of you, who will? Gu Kezhou sat down at the edge of the bed, speaking openly. Although I'll admit, I did have something else in mind. There's an old saying, couples make up on the pillows they fight on, so I came to make peace. Peace or taking advantage, you know the truth. Yu Shui glared at him. Gu Kezhou didn't reply. Instead, he stared at her for a while, then suddenly pulled her off the bed and stood her in front of the full-length mirror. Yu Shui, touch your flat chest, look at my face, and tell me, who's taking advantage of whom here? Gu Kezhou said seriously. Yu Shui elbowed him. Can you stop talking about my chest? You're free to talk about my little brother if you want. I'm not as shameless as you. Well, then you're doomed to be conquered by me. In the end, Yu Shui was half coaxed, half forced into accepting the cold compress. Gu Kezhou had always been shameless, knowing just how to offer a sweet after giving a slap. After the bed incident following their argument, neither Gu Kezhou nor Yu Shui could clearly define whether they had made up or not. They continued interacting as usual, without much thought. However, Gu Kezhou became noticeably busier as he prepared to secure investment for his startup, shedding his previously laid-back attitude. For 2 consecutive weeks, he was out early and back late, hardly having a moment to rest. One evening, Yu Shui came home after work to find that Gu Kezhou had returned early, a rare occurrence. He hadn't even bothered to change his clothes and was lying on the bed with his eyes closed, looking utterly exhausted. Yu Shui approached him, concerned. Seeing that his complexion was a bit off, but realizing he was just asleep, she sighed in relief. Gently, she covered him with a blanket, crouched down by the bed, and quietly watched him. Gu Kezhou had a striking appearance, long eyelashes, a tall nose, and lips that were so tempting they made her want to kiss him. When he smiled, he always curled up one side of his mouth first, exuding a bit of a mischievous charm that made hearts flutter. Now, asleep and serene, he was the perfect embodiment of that viral phrase from the internet, a quiet, handsome man. Just looking at that face, Yu Shui thought that falling for him wasn't the least bit regrettable. As she was lost in her thoughts, Gu Kezhou suddenly opened his eyes, pulling Yu Shui into his arms, making her lie on his chest. Am I good looking? Gu Kezhou's voice was still a little husky from sleep, making it irresistibly sexy. Instinctively, Yu Shui nodded. Gu Kezhou, knowing his own charm, deliberately lowered his voice, teasing, Does it make you want to act on your desires? Yu Shui swallowed hard and barely managed to regain her composure. No. TSK, listen to your heartbeat, it's so loud, I can hear it from 10 meters away. And that face of yours, redder than a carrot, and you still say no. Gu Kezhou playfully exposed her lie. It's a no. Yu Shui stubbornly denied it. Gu Kezhou raised an eyebrow, smirking triumphantly. Yu Shui couldn't stand his smug look. Pretending to make a threatening gesture, she snapped, Haven't you ever heard of the phrase, see it, don't say it? Sorry, I've been honest like this since I was a kid, Gu Kezhou replied with a grin. Annoyed, Yu Shui suddenly leaned forward and kissed him hard. Seeing his wide-eyed surprise, Yu Shui felt victorious. She smugly said, Since you've already said it, I might as well live up to the reputation, right? Her intention was to knock him down a peg, but instead, Gu Kezhou shamelessly gave her an ambiguous smile and tugged at his collar. Oh, so you like being forceful? You should have said so earlier. Gu Kezhou? Yu Shui punched him. I'm here. Gu Kezhou replied lazily. Do you want to kiss or sleep? I won't resist. Do whatever you want. As if. Yu Shui huffed in frustration. But I want to, Gu Kezhou said calmly. Yu Shui was utterly defeated. After their playful exchange, Gu Kezhou seemed to have regained his energy. He clung to Yu Shui, refusing to let go, insisting they sleep together. Yu Shui firmly refused, but Gu Kazhou began to play the pity card. Shui, I'm 1 year older than you, already 23. For so many years, I've fought against a man's primal instincts and remained pure for you. Don't you feel sorry for me? I'm not even asking for much. We can just chat under the covers, okay? Yu Shui snorted. That's probably the most insincere lie you've ever told. Gu Kazhou wasn't the least bit embarrassed about being caught in his lie. Instead, he tightened his arms around her and cheerfully said, "Only you understand me, Shui." Yu Shui remained silent, contemplating for a moment. Then, she suddenly leaned in close, wrapping her arms around Gu Kazhou's neck, her face pressed against his, their breaths mingling. Gu Kazhou, if you tell me why you left 5 years ago, we'll sleep together tonight, okay? Her voice was light and seductive. Gu Kazhou's breathing became erratic, but his rationality remained. Shui, anything but that. Ask me for anything else. Hearing this, Yu Shui's expression immediately cooled. Forget it then. She made a move to get up, but Gu Kazhou didn't let go. Frustrated, she hit him. Let go, Gu Kazhou, you jerk. You and your principals, go sleep with them. Spend the rest of your life with your principals, and don't ever come near me again. Gu Kazhou let her hit and curse him, but he still refused to release her. Gu Kazhou, do you even know? Yu Shui stopped hitting him, her voice softening as tears welled up in her eyes. When you left, I kept wondering if I had done something wrong, if I made you angry. Did you stop liking me and just didn't know how to tell me, so you left? I even worried that you were sick. What if something happened to you while you were alone? No, Shui, no. It wasn't your fault, Gu Kazhou said, panic rising in his voice. It's my fault. I owe you. Gu Kazhou, Yu Shui cupped his face. This is your last chance. Tell me why you left 5 years ago. Whatever the reason, I'll accept it. But if you don't, I'll disappear from your life forever. No. Gu Kazhou's eyes reddened with desperation. Shui, I don't want you to know the reason. I'm afraid. Yu Shui said nothing, silently looking into his eyes. Gu Kazhou shut his eyes tightly, and when he opened them again, he looked like a man facing his execution. The day before Yu Changyuan's accident, I saw him. 5 years ago, after Yu Changyuan was released from prison, the first person he sought out was Gu Kazhou. He stood in Gu Kazhou's way with a steel pipe, blocking him as he returned home. Kid, you got me locked up for 2 years. How are you going to settle this score? Oh, and I heard you're getting close to that loser from my family. Did you sleep with her? After all, I've raised her. I can't just let you sleep with her without an explanation. How do we settle that score? Watch your mouth, Gu Kazhou said coldly, his expression stern, but his tone calm, like the calm before a storm. If you have a grudge, come at me. If you dare touch a hair on Shui's head, I'll destroy you. Huh, Yu Changyuan scoffed. When I was fighting, you weren't even out yet. Looks like that girl is your soft spot. That makes it even more interesting. Unless you kill me, she'll never escape my grasp. I'll hit her until it hurts you the most. Ah. He cried out as Gu Kazhou punched him, hearing him say coldly, "Then I'll kill you." The boy's eyes were sharp as knives, filled with rage, making anyone who saw him feel a twinge of fear. Then what does it have to do with you disappearing without a word? Shui didn't understand. That day, I beat him up pretty badly, Gu Kazhou recalled. I took his steel pipe and whacked him a few times on his leg. He didn't break any bones, but he'd be limping for at least half a month. I thought it would keep him in line, so you could enjoy your post-exam vacation without worry. But that day, he got into a car accident. Shui finished for him. Yes, Gu Kazhou's voice was filled with self-reproach. When he left that day, he was limping. He was hurt and slow to react. If it hadn't been for that, maybe he wouldn't have. Gu Kazhou, Shui interrupted, having a vague idea of Gu Kazhou's thoughts. You think you harmed him? That you injuring him made him unable to dodge, leading to the accident. Gu Kazhou was silent, but his pained expression clearly indicated that was what he believed. Shui, the police report and the surveillance footage both prove that Yu Changyuan was drunk and ran a red light. The driver wasn't fully at fault either. It has nothing to do with you. Even if you hadn't hurt him, he still brought this on himself by running a red light while drunk. You're foolish. What does he have to do with you? Why are you taking this responsibility on yourself? Shui felt both anger and heartache, unable to believe this was the reason. Water Shui, I wasn't thinking of him, Gu Kezhou said softly. At that time, I was with you dealing with his affairs. You were in such a bad state, sometimes crying out of nowhere and waking up from nightmares. I thought you were sad. After all, he was your father and you had feelings for him. So I felt responsible for your loss of a father. He doesn't deserve the title of father. I don't acknowledge him. Shui cried. I didn't cry for him. I never received a father's love or warmth from him. My memories of him are filled with punches and kicks. I cried for myself, for the beatings I endured, for the suffering I felt, for wishing I was dead so I wouldn't have to face the fear and relief of meeting you. Do you understand? I understand. Gu Kezhou nodded repeatedly, feeling relieved. Shui, it was just my wild imagination. I misunderstood. Understand what? Tell me. Shui asked through her sobs, needing to confirm he truly had come to terms with it. Shui, I was just too scared back then, afraid you'd think I killed Yu Changyuan, afraid that we'd be seen as enemies and could never be like before. But I couldn't act like nothing had happened. I'd feel guilty, which is why I disappeared without saying anything. I'd rather you think of me as a heartless scumbag than know the truth. I would rather you resent and hate me in silence than know the reason. That way, I could feel a bit better. 5 years without seeing you or contacting you was my punishment, my atonement. What sin do you have, you big fool? Shui cried, hitting him again before instinctively hugging him. His death has nothing to do with you. If you have any guilt, it should be for abandoning me and for making me feel this way now. He was truly a big fool. How could he have suffered alone, bearing secrets and burdens that didn't belong to him, hiding in a foreign country? Gu Kezhou's eyes also turned red, reaching out to wipe her tears. I do have a sin. I made you feel this way. I'll be your servant for the rest of my life, okay? For a lifetime. You owe me a lifetime. And let's make a pact. In the future, we have to be clear with each other. No more misunderstandings. Shui said, her tears blurring her vision, but her expression remained firm. First, I'll tell you, I was lying before. I've always stayed in the same place. I've never changed. I still like you and love you. I promise you, Shui, I knew you hadn't changed. Gu Kezhou said excitedly, joyfully embracing Shui, wishing he could merge her into his body. Only then did they truly weather the storm. After a while, Gu Kezhou suddenly spoke up. But what should we do, Shui? I've changed. Shui was startled. Gu Kezhou, you... Before she could finish her sentence, Gu Kezhou sealed her lips with his. He kissed her passionately, recklessly, disregarding everything, as if he wanted to make up for all the years he had missed. He said, I've changed. I can no longer be satisfied with just holding your hand and kissing you. I want you. I want to sleep with you. I want to possess you. 5 years passed before the misunderstanding was resolved. Although Yu Shui wanted to spend some intimate moments with Gu Kezhou, she wasn't quite ready to jump into bed with him right away. She turned her back, remaining silent. Gu Kezhou didn't linger, his hands already starting to wander restlessly. Yu Shui, if you dare to break your promise, I won't hold back. If you like it rough, cough, I can accommodate you. Hearing this, all of Yu Shui's concern and guilt evaporated in an instant, her tone slightly annoyed. Who jumped straight into bed right after confirming a relationship? Only a scumbag would do that. Then I guess I'm a scumbag, Gu Kezhou shamelessly declared. After all, whether I'm a scumbag or a good man, it's all just for you. What do you mean by just confirming our relationship? It's been 7 years since sophomore year, and I still haven't had my way with you. Why start counting from sophomore year? At that time, Yu Shui trailed off, unable to finish her sentence. I wasn't that desperate back then. Gu Zhou finally defended himself. You were still like a little bean sprout. I wasn't interested in that. It's not like I was just looking to add some leverage to sleep with you. Bean sprout. Yu Shui turned to face him. Is that what you really think? Little bean sprout, little steamed bun. I'm sorry, I didn't meet your standards. You might as well go find a hydrogen balloon. Not gonna happen. Gu Zhou cautiously leaned closer to her. To be honest, you're a little flat, and I share some responsibility for that. What do you mean? It's all my fault for being young and shy back then, not daring to make a move and fulfill my boyfriend duties to give you kisses. You were shy? Yu Shui rolled her eyes, then suddenly realized what he meant by kisses, and gave him a sharp pinch. If you dare to do anything back then, I would have chopped your hands off. So, does that mean it's okay now? Gu Zhou misinterpreted her reaction. Yu Shui fell silent, pretending to be an ostrich. Don't think you can hide just because you're pretending. Gu Zhou circled back to the topic. In the end, Yu Shui was worn down by his persistence. Gritting her teeth, she said, Fine. Let's sleep then. Before her words were even finished, Gu Zhou rushed to take off her clothes. Yu Shui could only facepalm, thinking he must be some kind of teddy bear spirit. Gu Zhou certainly didn't disappoint his teddy bear reputation, making it so difficult for Yu Shui that she almost wanted to kick him off the bed. However, it was clear that while Gu Zhou was the one who shamelessly slept with Yu Shui, he later felt like he had been the one at a disadvantage. He complained, I'm handsome and devoted, yet I'm stuck here with you. How are you going to repay me? Yu Shui glanced at him and calmly replied, I have nothing to offer but my body. Gu Zhou was unhappy. That still puts me at a loss, and I'm the one who's exhausted. He had become so skilled at acting like a rogue that it was now seamless. Yu Shui remained unfazed. What do you want then? Gu Zhou's gaze fixated on her, full of implication. Water can support a boat, but it can also capsize it. Yu Shui couldn't hold back her blush. You're shameless. Shameless people are invincible. It's been my motto all along. Gu Zhou boasted proudly. Yu Shui felt speechless, looking down for a moment before leaning closer to his ear, whispering, Honestly, are you just looking to satisfy your urges? Gu Zhou was offended, flipping her over and pinning her down. Who are you calling impotent? Yu Shui looked at him without speaking, her smile inviting. Gu Zhou sighed. He decided to enjoy himself and do what he loved, even if it meant taking on some discomfort in the meantime.